Hello, and welcome back to another art video. For this video, I asked my friends to give me random words, and I would create a world based on them. Dare I say this video is a word building exercise. Pause for laughter. Before we get into it, please consider subscribing, and if you enjoy the video, like and share. Okay, let's go. So I asked my friends to give me 2 or 1 random word. All my friends replied very quickly with very interesting words. You know, you have your friends that thinks of nice and cute words. And then you have the other friends. I am not sure what I'm gonna do with this one, but while we're here, if you're someone with a prostate, go get it checked up once in a while. Oh yeah, and my mom really wanted to give a word as well, so I'll add her words to the list. So here are all the words that I use to build the world. It's quite a lot, but you'll see later on that I focus on some more than others. I wasn't too sure how to start. So at first, I just Googled all the words and looked at the images that came up. From those images, I saved the one I preferred, and then I just slapped them on a messy mood. From the messy mood board, I discovered many different things, mostly about colors. Even if all those words were very random, turns out that most of them had very similar color palettes. I distinguished 2 main different color palettes. That second palette was mostly added by the bubbles. As a whole, the bubbles added a lot of more colors. Then I played around to find a proper color palette. Once I found a color palette that I enjoyed, I moved to the clean mood board. On the clean mood board, I mostly focused on the word Ferris wheel, sprout, bear, artichoke, and bubble. Once I was done with the clean mood board, I started tracing the shape that I could see. This is when I discovered the most prominent shape was the circle. Now it was time to put pen on papers. I started to sketch some of the ideas that went through my mind. First, I had the idea of drawing a Ferris wheel with glass artichoke as cars. My second idea was to build a round glass building in which artichoke-shaped room would be spinning. And this idea stayed in the back of my mind. You'll see later why. A lot of my ideas includes glass because I felt like glass properly represents the word bubble. But quickly I realized that I got stuck in the same kind of idea, a round building with glass artichoke-shaped sections. So it was time to fully change my point of view. Instead of having one round building, I thought, what if I stack a bunch of glass artichoke on top of the others, giving more city skyline feel. But still, my idea stayed around a glass artichoke solar punk vibe. So for the next one, I decided to change the entire style. And I went to my favorite style, cyberpunk. This time, I sketched a huge round agglomerate city, and it started to click. This was my final idea. It's a big agglomerate city that spin because it takes resources from the warm, long river underneath. I had to look it up to see if such resource could be used for energy, and turns out that yes, geothermal energy is an energy, from what I understand, that use the warmth of the earth to heat up water, which in turn can give you electricity.
You may have relaxed in a natural hot springs pool, or seen the old faithful geyser blasting hot water into the air in Yellowstone National Park. But have you ever thought of where all that heat comes from? Well, it comes from deep beneath the surface of the Earth, and it's called geothermal energy. And we can use it to generate clean, renewable electricity.
Don't ask me how we get from warm water to electricity, but you can definitely have a look at this video to have more information. But let's get back to our world building. The city would spin like a Ferris wheel. The infrastructure would only allow the bottom layers of the big city to harvest the heat of the long river. And because resources would be precarious, the entire city would share the time they are at the bottom to harvest the resources. And to do that, they would spin the entire city. Now I had to figure out how the building themselves would spin to stay upright while the entire structure of the city spins. And this is what I'm doing next. My first idea was to spin an entire island. That would mean that there will be many different islands on the main city that would be spinning on their own. Then I started to look at what if I just make each building spin. I focused on the gear aspect of the spinning, but I don't know, it didn't really inspire me. So I googled Bubble City, and that is when it clicked. I ditched the idea of gears and focused on a two-tiered bubble town. The town would not be inside a glass dome, which makes the title Bubble Town inaccurate, but it would be a round two-tiered town. Round because each towns would be inside a ring, which would allow them to individually spin inside the main city. From there, I realized that this world will be based on a very Western way of living, with a very important separation from urban and suburban, as the top tiers would be reserved for the work buildings and the bottom tiers for the living buildings. I didn't draw it, but I also looked at some type of bridges that could connect all the different towns within the main city and came up with the idea that bridges would work only certain times when they connect within the spinning cycle of the main city. Otherwise, they would use flying cars. And finally, I was ready to paint the final piece. This painting had the hardest perspective I've ever painted. Not only there was a lot of circles, which turns out is pretty complicated to paint perspective-wise, but mainly I had to pick each position of each town within the main city. And oh God. But thanks to this, I can tell you that there are around 125 towns within the main city. Then it was time to put colors on the canvas. I had a hard time with the color of the sky. I changed it later on off camera, and I'm interested. Do you prefer the previous coloring or the one that will come later on? Leave it in the comments. Then I decided that I would paint only one town that I would duplicate many different times within the main city. The top tier is made out of metal, as I thought that it's only for working environments. They didn't really need grass. But the bottom tiers is made out of dirt held by a metal mesh. The fence to hold people inside is shaped a little bit like an artichoke. When I started painting the houses, I realized that they kind of lacked characters. I didn't want the people to live in a liminal space, so I made sure that each little house had their own characters. But the top tiers, well, because it's reserved for working environment, most of the buildings look alike. Because I'm guessing profit would be more important than the beauty of architecture. Now that one town was painted, it was time to paint the whole city. Each tiers are made out of metal. The towns would be resting on those metal sheets, while everything would be spinning inside a ring. Same mechanism as the towns. I don't have much more to say about the painting of the main city, so let's go back to this list of words and see how they apply in this painting. Artichoke, as I said previously, heavily inspired this painting by the roundness of the artichoke and the petal-shaped fence. The bubble inspired the multiple towns round-shaped within one town. Equinox was a little bit more complicated, but this extreme lighting of the sun was inspired by the equinox, as it's in between the night and day stage, which makes me think of the half day, half night of the equinox. Ferris wheel, well, obviously the entire spinning thing. Long is the long warm river which the entire energy of the city is coming from. Precarious is used within the idea that there's not enough energy to go all the way to the top of the main city. Thus, the city has to spin. And sprout, I didn't talk a lot about that word, but it heavily inspired this painting as well. As you can see, the pipe that is going to the river represent that one sprout shooting to the sky. And yes, I am missing 3 words: bear, Mr., and of course, prostate. But hey, I think I did pretty well, nonetheless. Okay. Before we see the final result, please consider subscribing, and if you liked it, feel free to leave a thumbs up. Let's have a look at the final piece.